Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower for Author Magazine, and today I'm in Seattle, Washington with poet and essayist Sheila Bender. Sheila, welcome to Author.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and I'm really happy to be here.
So, all right, Sheila, so let's talk about where this started for you. There's a lot of paths a life can take, and yours took the writing path. When did you know that was going to be the direction you were headed?
You know, I think I'm going to give you two answers. One is I probably always knew.
Yeah.
And the other one is when I was willing to follow that path.
You were willing. When were you not willing to follow that path?
Until I was 25.
Okay, that's not bad. I've known people going longer.
Yeah.
But so you went through college and you were drawn to it, but you were like, it's impractical, or
Well,
what was preventing you from?
So many things. I mean, one would be that I was raised to make a living. And that's
yeah.
a very dicey thing. How do you make a living as a writer? And I guess I thought, you know, it's funny, you look back and you think, oh, God would have told me I was a writer and I would have known I could do it. And of course that's not true. It has to rise up in you. But when I look back and I remember things like a junior high school teacher who allowed me, at my request, to write my social studies papers in ballad form. It's like, how did I do that and not
How could you not know you were a writer if you're doing that?
Well, I think it had to do with taking risks. So I trained as a teacher, which has been really handy. And I didn't become a writing teacher till after I was 25. I was an English major.
Right.
I was a junior high school teacher. I was a community college teacher.
And so in 25, you allow yourself to start teaching writing, but also obviously to begin writing your own stuff with the intention of growing it, sharing it, etc.
I guess so.
You guess so.
Here's what happened. I had a baby, my first child, and I looked at her and I said, "Hello, Emily, who are you?" And I swear that I heard inside me, "Hi, Mom, who are you?" And I knew then, really, by then, I knew that I needed to answer that question. I needed to be the person I thought I was, but was too afraid to be, that I had to be that person if I was going to be a good mom.
You've published, is it a dozen books on the craft of writing? It's well, memoir and collections of poems. So I've always felt that the memoir and the personal essay are very close. You know, those are like cousins, close cousins. But I think the poem is also a branch off of those three. So you start with poetry, but then eventually you move into, maybe first talk about why poetry is close to memoir and personal essay.
I think it's because you're examining personal experience. At least contemporary poetry is very much about examining personal experience. And that's what I think a good essay, personal essay, is doing, and a memoir, where it's just about length and compression. There are different requirements. However, even in prose, compression and image and metaphor and all kinds of detail are important. So that's, I mean, they're all close cousins because they're all valuing that journey for discovery, really. And I think, I know it's Robert Frost who is quoted as saying, "No tears in the writer, no tears in the reader," and misquoted, I'm happy with the misquote, he's misquoted as, "No discovery in the writer, no discovery in the reader." So when you're writing, even if you're writing about the past, there's a now to it. Why are you doing it now?
Right.
And that has to be woven in there in some way.
Yes.
And upon what occasion are you writing whatever you're writing? The poet Richard Hugo from Federal Way, not from France, in his book, Triggering Towns.
Very good.
I think it's in that book that he says, the poet is a pure cynic, because to a poet, nothing is necessarily more important than anything else.
Right.
And my own interpretation of that is you can write about a spoon, it's just as important as writing about the stars.
Exactly. And that's why I love when I tell my students, I teach memoir, and a lot of them have led some very dramatic lives. That's what's brought them into the memoir class. Now I start by saying, no one's life is less interesting than mine, I can assure you. And yet I am endlessly interested in anything.
Yes.
You know, it's happened to me.
It's what you create from that, the emotions, the truths. So I'll tell you a little story if it's okay.
Yeah.
Years ago I was teaching the description essay, and one of my students said, I don't have anything I want to describe. The actual prompt was to think of a person, place, or event that you have strong feelings about, love or hate. She couldn't do it. So we took a walk, and I said, I don't understand why it's difficult, because she was an adult. She said, I grew up in a logging camp. You know how that is. So it's become one of my lessons. And I said, no, I grew up in the suburbs of New Jersey.
I don't know how that.
Yeah, but the point is, even if I'm writing to a crowd that grew up in the suburbs of New Jersey, it's my experience growing up. And if it reflects their experience, all the better. It gives them a moment to discover with me what it was all about.
Let's talk about discovery. I do think that's the part of personal essay and memoir poetry that's so delicious. But it's an interesting experience because, of course, it's your life and you're telling a story, sometimes about something maybe you've told people about before. But until, I know for myself, if I don't have the feeling of discovery, I'm not interested in writing it, and it's not done. I've got to find something I didn't know before.
Right, but you don't know what that's going to be when you start.
No.
Right. And to be willing.
You have to really be like, almost set your intention, like, okay, a kind of innocence in a way approaching it, yeah?
I agree, because if we're writing to an ending we already know, or if we're writing with intention, so many times I'll have a student say, but my intention was, and I remember my poetry teacher saying, oh, the words are always smarter than I am. So they lead, you have to listen to them. And if you start pushing into it, in them down because your intention, you're doing something like writing in a blue book in school.
Yeah.
You know? You're not really going to lead to discovery. Your intention is just going to make it all flat.
I teach adults, you know, I don't teach teenagers or even college students. It's always adults for the most part. And I think that adults are train themselves to bring intention to, like, okay, someone's got to steer this ship here.
Yeah, because that's how they've mastered life.
That's right.
And that's one of the messy things about writing, I think, is that we're so used to being in charge and control of wherever we've mastered something, that to sit down in front of a blank page and see something that makes perhaps no sense to us is a very frightening event. And so the part of us that wants to stay in charge comes in. And then what I call the design mind, the kind of associational mind that we need as creative people and writers, just is not invited, and so it hangs back. So David Wagner, to quote him again, taught us that writing is done in 3 stages, and if I'm quoting him correctly, he said the first one was invention, the second one was shaping, and the third one was editing, and never to put that editing one first, because it's the crazy things that we associate to that make it matter.
If you could take 23-year-old Sheila aside, who was still unwilling to write, what would you say to her? What would you say to her that she needed to hear, aside from what your daughter said to her in your mind?
Oh, I used to say so many things to her. She was a teacher by then.
So she was already interested in teaching. So you were, so you were kind of following your path, half of it.
I taught poetry to my 7th graders because I found it exciting. What would I say? I think I would say, you know, you don't really feel comfortable in this life, and if you let yourself write, you're not going to believe, you can't believe now how together you'll feel, how you'll feel right with yourself, and therefore you don't feel left out, because you'll be making the choices about who you want to fit in with, and every day will be a better day. That's what I tell her.
Sheila, I do have one more question for you, and what I'd like you to do is finish this sentence. If writing has taught you anything, it's taught you what?
That there is truth in our experience, and when you find the truth, you open up to love and to kindness, and life gets better.